Peace, everyone. It's Black High Priestess. I just made a post on my Facebook page called A General Analysis of Color and Sex in America. And I thought it would be good if I expounded on each conjecture just to kind of clarify what perspective I'm coming from. And the reason I entitled it A General Analysis of Color and Sex in America is because to witches and mages, you all act like humans. All of you all behave like you're from the human race. So I think it's important to start talking about color instead of saying race, to really actually talk about the differences between black people and white people, while staying on a certain code of us dealing with racism that is based on color. It's not based on the fact that when a black person and a white person goes to the toilet, someone's shit doesn't stink. It's not based on the fact that both black people and white people die. It's not based on the fact that both black people and white people have to accept Christ as their Lord and Savior to, reincarnate and be saved from hellfire. It's based on the fact that racism is based on color. Always has been. So, without further ado, I just want to give just expound a little bit on each one. So, here we go. Black men who hate black women symbolizes abusive absentee mothers. So, what I generally realize is, for the most part, when men grow up with women issues, or when women grow up with men issues, your first impression of masculinity and femininity comes from your mother and your father as a child. So when you have an abusive or absentee mother, or abusive or absentee father, that's going to be your impression of men and or women subconsciously. So when you take that to dealing with color and sex in America and the effects of racism and white supremacy, this is where a lot of my analysis are going to come from general, basic psychology for dummies, essentially, or, psychology for people who are at least at an intermediate level of intellectual capacity and the ability to just comprehend and analyze society based on your own intellect and education. So this, has a lot to do with actual psychology, and then the deeper psychology based on how you are treated in America because of the complexion of your skin. Again, black men who hate black women, abusive absentee mothers. Black women who hate black men. Oftentimes this will stem from sexual molestation in the home that went unpunished. Why do I say that? Because again, a hatred for men, and then a hatred for men of a certain race. For black women, a lot of times that's going to stem from not being protected by a black man. But when you hate black men, when you have a underlying or a subconscious hatred for black men, you're oftentimes dealing with being abused by black men when you had some sense of understanding that this man, usually an adult, should be protecting you instead of molesting you. So a lot of black women grow up in a world where they see white women being protected by white men, but may have experienced themselves or experienced seeing it normal for black men to abuse black women. So she then develops a underlying hatred for black men because the black men in her community, starting with her home, abused her and didn't protect her, and the other black men did not punish him for that. So she understands that black men are predators to her subconsciously. Black women who love black men. Or, I'm sorry. Okay, okay, we'll go there. Black women who love black men. Gold diggers. Why did I come up with this analysis? Gold diggers has a widely negative connotation. It doesn't have to be a negative connotation in this instance, but why I use the term gold diggers for black women who love black men, and skipping down a little bit the term self-worth for black women who love white men. Well, here's the thing. Black women who love black men tend to have very good experiences with black men. They are used to being protected by black men. They're used to being loved by black men. They're used to being provided for by black men. And they're used to being appreciated by black men. So what type of black men have these qualities that allow a black woman to love the black man in a similar way that a white woman is able to experience that self-love and that femininity that makes her love and appreciate men and the men of her race? Wealth. Black men who have wealth, black men who have education, black men who have wisdom, black men who were groomed by other black men who have a sense of wealth or prestige, do not have the inferiority complex that comes with the slave mentality. So when a black woman has good experiences with a black man, a lot of times she is around black men who are wealthy spiritually, mentally, emotionally, but most importantly, who are financially stable. So he is not under an inferiority complex, and he has no need to abuse women or the women of his race who he can get away with abusing without lash from the authorities, meaning whites. So black women who love black men tend to be black women who only spend time around black men who have wealth. Black men who are wealthy, who are prestigious, who are sophisticated, aristocratic, and highly educated. High education oftentimes leads to a form of wealth or financial stability because it opens doors to financial stability or employment that generates financial stability in a man. Okay. It's easier for men, white men in general, to find employment, gainful employment that is not criminal. So what I'm getting at is that oftentimes I find that black women who love black men, they are women who will only deal with a certain caliber of man, and she will only deal with a certain type of man. She hasn't dealt with enough low-class men to understand why black women hate black men. She has not dealt with abuse. She hasn't dealt with sexual molestation. She hasn't dealt with hatred and being told she's not good enough or being told that she's less than a white woman in media arts and things. She's been around black men who are not victims and who are not low class. So, that oftentimes connotes a gold digger. Again, a negative term perceived by men. But, what I find is black women who are gold diggers, they have very good experiences with black men. They have the best experiences with black men because they understand in order to have a good experience with a black man, that man needs to be a man. In order for a man to be a man, he has to be financially stable. And these are things that Kevin Samuels is revealing, that the world star hip hop crowd is, getting a rude awakening, or, or also a lot of the fact that a lot of Black Americans are conservative and elite thinking, is also being exposed. And the the intersection between low class Black people and high class Black people is being met now on social media. And I think that's the number one thing that needs to happen for Black people to excel. We need to stop looking at white people and start dealing with the fact that we have low class and high class Black people in our race. So we need to be able to deal with each other in this time where white people are no longer really ruling over us. Black men who love white, okay, so Black men who love Black women tend to be mama's boys. Why do I label Black men who love Black women as mama's boys? Why is that the phrase for Black men who love Black women? Because a lot of times when a Black man has very good experiences with Black women, he's had a good experience with his mother, and he's actively seeking out women who are like his mother. And for a lot of times, seeking out a woman who is like your mother, it starts with complexion, hair, it starts with looks. Men are different than women. And I know women hate to deal with that, and I know some gay men hate to deal with that. But it's true. Men are different than women. Men are designed differently. So a man is attracted to things in women based on his masculine design. Women hate the fact that men are sexual creatures and are attracted to beauty, because a lot of women are in America are not satisfied with their natural beauty, and have to go to lengths to be beautiful and compete with naturally beautiful women. But it's what women do. It happens. So when a man has an excellent relationship with his mother, usually he's a mama's boy, and if he's a mama's boy, he's gonna really love and appreciate and be almost in a fetish-like way attracted to women who look like his mama. So Black men who love Black women tend to be fetishizing their mother, and their love of Black women, it comes from how much they love their mother, more so than actually loving the qualities of the average Black American woman. The average Black American woman wears weave. The average Black American woman is a little bit loud, a little bit aggressive. The average, Black American woman, has a lot of different qualities and things based on racism, but also based on African heritage and genetics. And to really love and appreciate the average Black American woman, who is almost completely erased from media, except in a negative light, is very rare. It's very rare for So for Black men who love Black women, you're oftentimes dealing with a mama's boy. You're dealing with a man who's fetishized the phenotype of his mother. More so than a man who has embraced the struggles that Black women go through and love the character that comes from that struggle. The character that comes from a Black woman's struggle is often an aggressive, guarded, distrusting, sometimes crazy or emotionally unstable woman. And though these are not the things that black men love about black women oftentimes. Trust me, there's a lot of men who love black women who are in victim mode. Because of how it makes them and how it boosts their self-worth. But we're talking about, just in general, what I find is a lot of black men prefer black women to behave in the ways that in those docile ways that white women are coined as behaving. But when a black man loves a black woman, he's not loving her struggle. He's loving her aesthetic. So black men who love white women, I find, are dealing with an extreme form of self-hatred. Why? Well, because of the social standard, the double standard of masculinity, femininity, and being conquered or being a ruler. When one tribe or one nation conquers another, though the conquering men are in authority, and the man is already in authority to the woman spiritually, based on the scriptures and based on biology. So when one nation or one race of man conquers another race of man, that the loser, the man who lost the race, they become the inferior man, and the men who are ruling are the superior men. It's not different than the animal kingdom. It's not. So when black men love white women, what I find is he's suffering extreme self-hatred of the fact that he's part of the inferior masculine heritage or gene pool, or and I say gene pool because, again, the bucks who win the fight get to mate with the female mammal, or it's really true. It's true in reptiles too. So it's the animal kingdom. So with black men who love white women, they're looking for a trophy. They're suffering self-hatred because they hate the fact that they come from the conquered men or the conquered race, or they come from the color that has been conquered instead of the color that won the fight or won over the nation or the tribal warfare. So they are seeking a token, or they're seeking a trophy because they didn't win the nation. So what they can win is the women who are in power. Black men who love white women, for the most part, are dealing with an extreme deep-rooted psychological self-hatred, and are actually dealing with the understanding of how inferior black men are, based on knowing that masculine men win. And when we as black men are constantly admitting that white men are in power, it's admitting that we are inferior to him. So a black man who believes white men are in power will believe in his own inferiority and will seek out actively a trophy. And a trophy is not going to be a black woman, it's going to be a white woman, because the white women are the gene pool of the men in power. Black men who hate white women. So here's on the other hand, what I find is black men who hate white women oftentimes were early victims of racism in schoolwork or daycare, and they experienced racism from white women who were in power. And as a man, his genetic inclination is to understand that I'm a man and I have authority over a woman, spiritually and biologically. So this man probably at a younger age, when he was at some type of mercy of a white woman in authority, He was probably a victim of her racism or her feminism. And so he has grown to view white women in a negative light because a white woman expressed racist authority over him at a young age. Again, this is why, color and sex, we're dealing with, biological and spiritual sex roles of the man and the woman, and how that translates to white supremacy in America and people of certain complexions being treated a certain way in this nation. So black women who love white men, I find black women who love white men have the highest form of self-worth that you can really find among black women in America. Why? White men are in power. White men have conquered black men effectively. And black women, who are not gold diggers, have dealt with some of the most tremendous savagery from black men and understand just how deep self-hatred and victimhood in black men is. And black women who love white men, I find black women, they don't love that white man's whiteness. They don't love his look, like a lot of black men, or men in general are about looks. She's not in love with the way he looks. A lot of times she's not even in love with the way he thinks, because based on his look, which is his white color and his white masculinity, he's often coming from a privileged perspective. What I find is black women who love white men love the way she is treated by white men. And why does this lead to self-worth? Because black women who love white men know how a woman should be treated by a man. And she also knows from experience that black men do not value darker complected black women because we are not considered a trophy. So black women are treated like trash by black men. And also black women are expected to put up with low-class men with nothing to offer, and are expected to love him, give him sex, give him children, take care of him, go get the bag and bring it home because he's so inferior. But he's expected to be taken care of, and he mothers black women because he expects black women to do everything for him. So black women who love white men, they love being treated the way a woman is designed to be treated. They love being protected, they love being provided for, and they love being appreciated and admired for how dark and lovely and exotic their beauty actually is. Black women who hate white men. I oftentimes find that black women who hate white men are victims of abuse or rejection by public authorities or corporate officials. Meaning, a woman knows that a woman has some type of natural instinct or inclination, unless she's been abused in the home. But again, a woman has a understanding that she's a weaker vessel. So it's not abnormal for a woman to feel inferior to a man, or to be led by a man, or to see a man as an authority figure. That's not abnormal. So what I find is when black women hate white men, it's oftentimes because she's been a victim of abuse or rejection by public authorities or corporate officials, meaning she was rejected for a higher position by white men, and she has been actively prevented from excelling by white men. Meaning she's dealt with white masculinity, and she's dealt with both sexism and racism. And because she's dealt with both sexism and racism, she's dealt with too many white men who are both sexist and racist. and who give no merit to a woman, let alone a black one. And so she has developed the same hatred for white men that the average black man in America is groomed with. Because a man and a man are on equal grounds until one proves his inferiority or proves his superiority. White men have proven their superiority. So it's not abnormal for It's not abnormal for a black man to have an underlying subconscious or overt hatred for white men, because the white man has conquered him and conquered his race. But when a black woman hates a white man with the same integrity that black men hate white men, it's oftentimes because she was prevented in the same way black men are from excelling in society. She's ambitious, and her ambitions were blocked by white men with power. Okay, so now I want to analyze white people as well, because white people do have subconscious psychological ideologies also based on their privileged status in this nation. White men who hate white women, MGTOW. That's easy. Men going their own way. MGTOW is an acronym for men going their own way. This is a something that emerged within the past decade, and it's basically white men who hate white women. White men who are sick of white feminism. White men who are sick of how feminist white women have become when they already have everything. They already have the privileged, pampered princess status in America. They're already the status quo. They're already the standard of beauty and aesthetics. They're already the trophies of all men darker than a brown paper bag. So white men, there's a certain class of white men who have grown to hate white women because they have dealt with feminist white women. They've dealt with divorce from women who have had it all. They've dealt with cheating from women who think that black dick is better than being able to come home to a man who's taking care of you and doing everything for the kids and busting his ass. They're sick of dealing with white women who now act like ghetto black women who are low class, and they're sick of being talked down to and treated like inferior and treated the way black women tend to treat black men because of low class. They're sick of being treated like little boys by women. White men who hate white women are MGTOW. White men who love white women, I just find in general, they are God-fearing white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. It's not really all American, because America is a nation of swirling. All right. So I find white men who love white women, they're actually God-fearing. And what do I mean by that? I mean that their love for the women of their own race, it really comes from a spiritual understanding of how precious genetics are, and understanding that there's holiness in your genetics, and he fears God and doesn't want to give his genetics away to an obviously inferior race. We're talking about America now, not Africa. So again, white men who love white women tend to be God-fearing white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, Christians, whatever. But they are guarding their genetics fiercely because they understand that's the formula of their supremacy. And they are afraid of losing their sovereign status as the rulers over blacks and the rulers of the world. They're afraid of losing that sovereign status. God gave white people authority to rule. And white men who love white women fear God. That's what I find for the most part. They have ultimate respect for the Most High. White men who love black women are, for the most part, French Bohemian Cajuns. So if you understand the history of French, the Gauls, the migration of the French, the fact that a gypsy, the gypsies who settled in France, came from Egypt, were Egyptian migrants, understanding the French nomadic culture and understanding the French belt of Louisiana, where the French were very benevolent with the black slaves and did a lot to elevate black people by taking in, black slaves and giving them a upper class status that has led to the Creole elites that you now have. But Creoles are white women who love black men and reject black women, whereas Cajuns are specifically the white men who basically pick up the slack and take in the black women who are rejected by these black men and white women in the Creole culture. So white men who love black women, I find widely are by heritage French Bohemian Cajuns, by genetic heritage. Do your research and understand the history of France. Understand the history of the Gauls, of the French, of that part of Europe. Understand the migration of North Africans to Europe, and vice versa, and understand Bohemian culture. Understand what Bohemian culture kind of is and what that term represents in America. It represents that hippie type of existence, but where does it come from? It comes from nomadic culture. Bohemian culture does. It comes from French nomads taking on qualities and of each culture that they encounter in their migrations. White men who love black women, I find widely are by heritage French Bohemian Cajuns. White men who hate black women are racist. Why? What's the formula? White men, you're already in power, you're already privileged. Why do you hate black women? Why would a white man hate a black woman? Because the woman represents the status of the race. And if a white man hates a black woman, it's because he's racist. He knows his hatred of that black. He understands that the threat to his power is the black woman, not the black man. The threat to his power is the black woman being elevated because the woman represents the man. The woman represents the status of the man. So he knows as long as black women are inferior, he is ruling over black men. And the moment black women are elevated and beautiful and being loved and back to being Egyptian African queens, he knows that his throne is done. His throne is dead. Because if black women are doing good, it means black men are in power. So white men who hate black women are racist. That is the definition of racism, spiritually. White women who hate white men are feminists. Just like white men who hate white women are MGTOW, white women who hate white men are feminists. They behave like low-class black women who have dealt with abuse. But these women often have not dealt with abuse from white men. They are just under that Jezebel influence where they are sick of men. They're sick of men being in power. They're sick of men ruling over them. And so white women who hate white men, they tend to love black men because they like to use black men to compete with the white men who they really hate. White women who hate white men are the root of feminism in America. Mark my words and understand that formula. Feminism in America started with white women who hated white men. They did not want to submit to the white masculine regime. They did not want to submit to the high standards of beauty and femininity that white men have. Black men have extremely low standards of beauty and femininity because of slavery. Women were treated like men, like nothing, like trash. So black men have extremely low standards for women. White men have extremely high standards for women. White women who hate white men cannot meet the standards that white men set for femininity, so they become feminists. White women who love black men. There is a clear-cut envy of black women that I find in white women who overtly express a preference for black men. These